This week on Sprague Woodturning, we're going to take this walnut bowl that's well seen better days and fix it with some epoxy and turn this into a really beautiful, functional piece of art. That's next. All right, so let's get a closer look at this. I really like these natural voids in wood. You can use a natural inlay material. You can use epoxy, and that's what we're going to use here. Some of these make some of the coolest looking bowls that I've ever made. They look rather organic and natural. As far as the size is concerned on this, right now 14 1/4 by 4. Not super huge, but you know, on the east coast of Canada, you'd be very hard pressed to find any black walnut this size. It just doesn't grow here. So this moved with us from Ontario. And I think what we'll do is just incorporate an inlay in the rim, and we'll use the same epoxy and go down and fill this in here. And in the end, I think that this is going to be a really nice looking bowl when it's done. First things first, let's get a glue block on the bottom of it, and then that way we can get it on the lathe and trim all this anchor seal off. You can't cast when there's anchor seal on here. If you don't know what that is, it's like a liquid wax, and it slows the release of the moisture, so that way it prevents the wood from cracking. But when it comes to resin casting, you definitely don't want it on here, so we got to get rid of that before we can do anything. Anyway, let's get a glue block on the bottom, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much for stopping in and watching this week's video. I do upload every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I turn my videos into premieres so that we can talk about the piece as it's being made on the lathe. Now I'm using the Kutzall grinding disc here just to flatten this, and of course remove any of that anchor seal, because I'm going to stick a hot melt glue block on the bottom of this, and well, it isn't going to stick to that anchor seal, so it's important that it goes. And it's also very important that you have lots of volume on this waste block so that you have a good bond between it and the bottom of the bowl. There, I'll give that 10 or 15 minutes to harden up, and then we'll be on the lathe. That's not too bad for eyeballing it. So there is some danger here. This could break off and hit you. So when I say I'm not going to stand in the throw of the lathe, I'm not going to stand directly in front of this. That way, if it does come off, then it's not going to hit me. It's going to, you know, probably take out the window in my door going into my clean room. But hey, I guess it won't hit me. But anyway, this is important. Like when you're turning pieces that there could be an issue, it's best to stay to the side or like so. That way, if it does come off, it's not going to hit you. I'm going to start off here with the 5/8 bowl gouge from David Ellsworth. I'm going to use this to do the initial turning on this to make it run true and to get rid of all of this anchor seal. And right away, I mean, you can spot some really nice grain on the bottom of this. So yeah, you know, this is a very beautiful bowl. You can't go wrong with black walnut regardless of how it looks. That's just really all there is to it. I just wish that on the East Coast that, you know, we have some access to it. There is a little bit of cherry here, but you know, if you're going to find black walnut here, it's probably planted on somebody's front lawn. That's probably the only way that you're going to get your hands on any of it here. And in all likelihood, it's probably going to be English walnut, which is a lighter walnut. I don't know if people. So for the people who don't know, when you eat the walnuts that you eat that you buy in the store are typically English walnuts, and like I said, that wood is usually a little lighter than black walnut. And the nuts are actually larger too. Yeah, there you go. Like, I mean, it didn't take too much to get this trued up. I got lucky putting the glue block on the bottom. I left in a few of these real-time clips. This is a little simpler project to do than I usually do here. So I'm going to show that, and again, there's a lot of turners watch my videos to learn how to be a wood turner. So it's important to leave those clips in. And yeah, I mean, it didn't take very long to trim that up either. One big thing about this bowl that's a little different is that it didn't really move a whole lot when it dried, and I think maybe a lot has to do with the fact that it had that big natural void, and it probably released a lot of tension out of that void. But for the most part, usually after bowls dry, there's a significant ovaling to them, and that really wasn't the case. If you can basically chew something up in 2 passes, I mean, it really didn't move a whole lot when drying, which is not normal for wood. You may notice in the background that I finally got my thumbnail put up on the wall. It's been, I don't know how long I've had that thing, and I just really been waiting to put it up in the new shop. I had it in Ontario for, I don't know, probably a year before we moved, but I just, I didn't really have a place to put it. I do have a big sign that I used to put up at shows that I plan on putting right above my head. And that's going to be kind of a feature wall in my workshop. But my sign is actually in one of 3 storage units where all of our house contents are. So I've got to try and locate which one it's in, but for the life of me, I can't remember. So we're going to clean out this groove, and that is a Typhoon bit. You can get these at Lee Valley. I think there's a link in the description. And it does a really good job getting in there and cleaning out. You don't want to leave lots of kind of loose material in there, because when you put the epoxy in, it may break free, and then you've got little bits embedded in the epoxy. It just really doesn't look good. And of course, the goal here is to leave this groove looking as natural as possible and not put too many marks into it that will take away from that natural look. That is a freshly sharpened parting tool from Crown. I do prefer to use Crown tools. So I use, for the carbide side, I really like to use Hunter Tool Systems tools. And for any of the high-speed steel tools that I use, I prefer to use Crown. Crown's been around for a very long time, and they do make quality products. And I've used their stuff, well, pretty much ever since I became a wood turner, 25 years ago. Man, time is flying. But it's important that this is freshly sharpened, and just take really easy cuts, and then you won't destroy that groove where the opening is. And there you go. We're ready. Don't be so concerned about it down in the bottom, as long as the sides are cut cleanly. Now I'm going to make some molds here. I got this shelf lining material from Costco. If you're looking for it, I haven't really noticed if it's still available, but I've had pretty good success with this, and I usually don't get too many leaks. But I'm going to really go above and beyond here to make sure that this doesn't leak. Lots of glue, just trying to tack it down so that we're not going to have huge amounts of epoxy sitting in certain areas. But by putting that glue down and then sticking the duct tape to it, seems to really work well. There, if that leaks, I don't know what. I don't know what to tell you if that leaks. Come on. I got a cut in this one. Go figure. So that may have been fine. I could have just threw some glue on it and some tape, and it, in all likelihood, probably would have been okay. But you know, I just don't want to start off like this. So I figured that I would just pull it off because the glue isn't totally set yet. The other thing you may notice is I didn't do any sanding on this prior to getting ready to do the epoxy pour. And the reason for that is, of course, when you sand, you open the grain of the wood. And if you do happen to get an overspill or you do happen to get a leak, it can actually stain quite deeply, because I do plan on putting this in the pressure pot, and that will drive that into the especially the end grain. The end grain's a real big one. The only thing that you really have to be careful about after when you're trimming this piece after the epoxy pour is that you take equal amounts off the inside and the outside so that the inlay at the rim stays centered. If it goes off center, then it may look a little odd. So you just have to be careful about that. And same thing with sanding. You can remove a lot of material when you're sanding, so you have to be careful about that as well. There, that shouldn't leak. Keyword is shouldn't. Let's mix up some epoxy. Too many glue spots on there. This week we're going to be using Art Cast. It's a good epoxy for this, 1-to-1. You'll notice that I'm not going to be using any mechanical mixers. I'm just going to be mixing this by hand. And the big reason for that is because when this goes into the pressure pot and it's pressurized, it will shrink. And I don't want the inlay to shrink that much. So we're going to use Pearl Red. I decided to go with Pearl Red because we haven't used it in a long time. And I think that it'll go nice with this really nice dark black walnut. Right, I got the bowl set up in the pressure pot, so we're going to do the pour and the cleaner. So this is almost maxed out my pressure pot here. I think you might be surprised how much this takes, but whatever's left over will again go into my globe molds. And I don't even think I have any red right now, so that will work out if there is any left over. Some people might be wondering why I taped off such a large area, and it probably wasn't real noticeable in the video in the beginning there, but there are cracks. So by having that big area exposed to the epoxy, it'll fill those in and make a much better product. That's going to be good. I should mention that I did level this in here, so of course when I put the lid on this, I'm going to be very careful when I do so, and I'm going to pressurize this very slowly because this stuff is really close. I've got a bowl underneath this propped up so that we can see what we're doing here. All right, well, I think that's going to do it. What have we got left? Got 150 ml left, so that'll fill up a couple of globes. So I might as well just fill these globes up right in here, and that way we can pressurize it. Hopefully eliminate the bubbles. Well, here we are the next day. No leaks. Happy to see that. Yeah, I think it was pretty much a perfect pour. Yeah, we're going to lose probably 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch, but no leaks. That's the main one. All right, let's get this on the lathe. It'll probably be easier to try and pull all this stuff off when it's mounted on the lathe instead of trying to do it here. Other considerations if you're going to do an inlay like this at the rim is make sure you leave adequate thickness on the inside and the outside of the bowl. You know, on the end grain, if it gets too thin, the epoxy will weep through, and then you're going to have epoxy staining on the outside that you will not be able to get rid of. So there's that. If you do happen to be working with a piece that's a little thin like that, you can seal it with CA glue or say a quick setting epoxy and then do the pour, and you'll probably be okay. But you know, it's always best to leave it a little thicker than on the thin side. Yeah, until we get the majority of this whittled down, she's out of balance big time. So I'm interested to see how fast we can go here. So I'm going to switch to Hunter Tool Systems. This is the number 3 Hercules. Absolutely love this tool. Link in the description below. And it doesn't really do that great of a job getting rid of all this glue that was at the bottom. So I probably should have used the gouge to do that and then switch to the Hercules when I'm working out here by the rim. A couple of things to really be to watch here. Make sure that when you are trimming this, you're only taking off as little as possible, because at the rim you definitely can expose some epoxy staining that may have weeped into the end grain, because it will. And the same goes for sanding. Too much sanding and you might get into that epoxy staining as well. Yeah, so this is a pretty rough go here right now. I'm just kind of skimming across the surface, whittling this down, trying to get to, the surface of the bowl, essentially. I mean, there's a fair bit of epoxy there. And, you know what, it's pretty violent until you can get down, and you're going to have lots of chip out when I turn the lathe off here, you're going to see it. But of course, that will go away once the tool can maintain contact on the wood. Yes, chipped out pretty bad there. Light cuts are the key. If you're too heavy here, you could take out a big chunk of epoxy and, well, you're not going to like it. It's important to leave these real-time clips in just so that people have an idea actually how slow I'm going. When the footage is sped up, a lot of times it's deceiving, because it kind of makes it look easy, and for the most part, a lot of times it is. It's a patience game. You can't push epoxy like you can wood, and it didn't take long to get down to the inlay. And if you had mixed this epoxy with a paddle mixer and introduced a lot of air and didn't remove all of those bubbles prior to doing the pour, I don't know if you noticed how deep that groove was, but it was a good solid 1/4 of an inch, maybe even deeper than that, probably more like 3/8 of an inch. So you need that volume in there so that you can cut this inlay back. And if it's full of air, then it's going to shrink way down inside of the inlay area, and then you may be in trouble. You may end up going through it, especially if the bowl moves or warps a little bit once it gets into the heat. This is another common thing that, after you tool a piece of wood, it will release some tension, and then overnight it may move a little bit. And then again, if you don't have enough volume down inside of that inlay area, you may end up going through it at some part of the bowl. So make sure that if you're going to do this, that if you are going to use a paddle mixer, mechanical mixer, you degas the epoxy prior to pouring it. Because, if you don't, you could be in some serious trouble and have to redo it again. And for those who are curious, I haven't really done a whole lot with the workshop. I've just been filming a lot of stuff in the workshop and the new house build. And I'll talk about that here in a second after this real-time clip. It's good news though. For those who are not aware, my wife and I moved from Ontario to New Brunswick, and we are having a new house built. My contractor started on it on Monday. I'm actually a day early here on Wednesday, but by the end of the day today, the floor should be on the house. So that's a real big milestone because now they can backfill the foundation further. Can't really do that until the floor is on the foundation, and they might even have some walls stood up today. So we've got some something happening for a change, and it's knock on wood, things are going to go smooth with it. We are supposed to be getting some weather. We do need rain. We're basically in a drought here. It has not been good. Fire bans. So, we definitely need the rain, but, hopefully that happens on the weekends and it doesn't affect our house being built. I don't want to sound selfish, but, man, it's going to be so nice to be back into our home after selling our place in Ontario. And, it's just, we're just really looking forward to getting back into our new home, and, we're one step closer. I should mention that I was doing some shear scraping there, and things actually look pretty good with the gouge. No need for the Hercules there. These are the 3.5-inch double discs from sandpaper.ca, link in the description below. And I'm going to sand this from 60 to 320. I typically don't go any higher than 320 on normal bowls like this. If this was epoxy, I would go to 800. That small little epoxy area, not a big deal either. At 320, it actually looks absolutely fine. One of these days, I might even try an experiment. I might just sand to 320 on a like an epoxy hollow form and see what it looks like after that. So it's a pretty clean bowl, except for a couple of little holes here that we need to fill in. And of course, we're going to use the Flash Bond Thin from Designer Epoxy. And I'm just going to grab some dust off the lathe bed. And then we'll fill it. There we go. I'll give that about, 5 minutes. And then I'll just carry on sanding. It looks like there might be another little one there. But other than that, it's a very clean bowl. One little spot there. All right, well, that's it for 5 minutes. It's important to do some spot sanding here, and then once you've got all this glue ground down, then you can turn the lathe on and blend it all in. If you try to just straight sand it, it's not going to work. We're going to be using the universal tongue oil sealer from Waterlux. I highly recommend using this on Walnut. Walnut will give you some issues with Waterlux, and the sealer seems to really help with those issues. So of course my intention is to wipe this off after I get it on and let it sit for a little while. And of course that's going to allow that to soak into the grain and kind of seal up that grain structure. That way, in theory, you shouldn't use as many coats of the original after that. And hopefully it won't give you as big of a fit trying to finish this walnut piece. Well, there you go. I will say this walnut is really thirsty. It is really drinking up this sealer. That's a very cool. I just really like these natural voids like this. Just a huge bowl too. Yep, some pretty green in there. Chatoyance. Yeah, right there. Compression grain. Two little filled holes. Beautiful. Love me some black walnut. Anyway, I'm going to throw this back on and wipe it all off. You do not want this to harden on here like this because it will, it'll be very hard to get off the next day. Trust me. Thought I'd show it with it cleaned off. And I know there's a ton of people saying that's exactly the way I want my bowl. Problem is, the sealer is not a finish. And it says right on their website, Waterlux's website, that it is not. Beautiful grain. Anyway, let me know what you think. Is the red, how do you like the red? Blue would have been fantastic, but man, everything can't be blue. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow for the first coat of original. Good morning. So this is what we're looking at the next day. Had a little bit of bleed through on the grain here. Yeah, hopefully this isn't going to be too hard to, to get off. See it sitting there in the surface. So anyway, we're going to buff this and get our first coat of original on. That's the Triple E buffing compound, and I wiped this bowl down 2 or 3 times before I left, and I thought for sure that I had gotten the majority of it out, but you're going to see me, like, I'm really pushing on this buffing pad, and this buffing pad will remove, if I leave that on an epoxy area, it will grind it away. So I was having a really difficult time even cutting that back. So I decided to use some denatured alcohol and then some 800 just to sand it back because I just couldn't do it with the buffer. And eventually I can't do it with the 800 either. I have to switch it out and go to 600. And it was quite a chore to try and grind this sealer back. So if you're going to use this, absolutely make sure that you get as much of it off as you can. I decided to take this off of the lathe and show you what I was looking at. Now that's after using the 600. And I realize that 600 isn't a cutting grit. But the problem is if you drop in grit, then you're going to take a lot of that sealer coat out of the grain on this wood. And, then it's kind of pointless. So I use a number of 600 grits here, pieces of 600 grit, in order to get this down. And again, spot sanding it and then turning the lathe on and blending it in. And then, eventually it does work. And then I'll also buff this again. And then after that, we're ready. And I'll bring it up to the camera and I'll do, talk about what you have to do to make sure before you put another coat on. But yeah, I mean, follow the instructions on the can to a T, and if you do, then you shouldn't have to deal with a lot of stuff like this. Maybe turning the lathe on high speed, it would throw maybe some of that out, and then when you wipe it off, it may work for you that way. And of course, the denatured alcohol. I figured I would pull this off before I put the next coat on and show you. You see how the sheen is even across the surface? That's what you're looking for when you're buffing. If you don't remove any little lumps and bumps that you feel in here, well, when you put the next coat of finish on, you're going to see that or feel it through it. So it's important to level all that and flatten it all out, and it feels very nice. When I rub my hands across this, it is very smooth, and that's exactly what you want before you put the next coat of finish on. Yeah, it's unbelievable how hard that sealer is. Here's what we're going to be putting on. Waterlux Original Gloss. Now, if you compare the original to the sealer, the original actually buffs a lot easier than the sealer coat does, that's for sure. And it, you can just easily level the finish and get rid of any lumps and bumps just with the triply. There it is in its original coat. Probably very similar to we put the sealer on yesterday. Shiny finishes are not easy to do, and that's why a lot of people don't do them. That's really all there is to it. It takes a lot of work. Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, it's a beauty. Well, there will definitely be another one. A little bit more aggressive sanding than I wanted to, but 2 should probably do it. Anyway, I'll do the second one the same as I did this one, and we'll see you when we're doing the foot. So after 2 coats of the original, we're ready to cut this off of the waste block. Just wanted to get rid of that glue first. I find that if you use the parting tool prior to, getting rid of that glue, that it kind of clogs things up. So that's why I like to do that. And that's, about an inch of material left, 1.25 inches maybe holding it. Seems to be plenty, especially even a bowl this size. Well, that's going to do it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Special shout out to the membership. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for your support. And if you do want to be a member of my channel, it is $2.99 a month to do so. Let's have a last little chat about this beautiful black walnut bowl. Well, what do you think? You might hear some noise in the background. They're working on the house. The air compressor might go off every now and then. A little bit of sapwood right here. And for those of you who don't know what sapwood is on the outside ring of the tree. And there's another good example of it there. A little bit of it on the base as well. Size on this, 13 3/4 across and 3.5 inches tall, thereabouts. Beautiful little fruit bowl. It's a really nice centerpiece for somebody's table. So that's kind of what you would use this for. And let me know what you think about this inlay area. Again, so hard to show because it's so shiny. Rotating footage at the end should be pretty nice. I really like working on these basket case bowls, and if you didn't use the epoxy or some sort of CA glue with an inlay, I mean, it would be a shame to see this thing go to the fire pit, because that's where a lot of pieces like this end up. Anyway, this is for sale. If you're interested, send me an email to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, and I will disclose the price then in case this is a gift. But I like the color. Like I said in the video, we can't do everything blue. Everybody wants blue, blue, blue. But the thing is, I can't do blue each week. Purple would have been nice here too. Maybe a little more muted than this color. But if you've been around for a while, I'm a contrasting color guy. So I like color pop. And that's why I went with the pearl red. Anyway, let me know what you think. Don't forget to put designer epoxy in the comments down below to be entered in a 3-gallon giveaway at 145,000 subscribers when we get there. We are over 144,000 now, so hopefully it's not going to be too much longer. I have noticed that my subscriber count is starting to go up a little bit as we're moving into fall. I think people are back on YouTube now. They've kind of taken a summer break from YouTube, so hopefully things will improve here on YouTube. Speaking of designer epoxy, right now they've paused shipments to the US. They are waiting for their certificate from the Postal Service in the US so that they should be able to ship their epoxy into CUSMA, which is the Canada-US-Mexico agreement. So they're just waiting on that paperwork. I know that Gabriel was saying that they've been getting a lot of phone calls and emails looking to buy epoxy, but he was shipping stuff to the US and it was just a crazy amount of money that he's going to have to pay. So hopefully that's going to be no longer than a week, and they'll be able to resume shipments to the US, and things will be back to normal. all this tariff business. We're hoping that it'll all go away eventually and things will go back to normal. But anyway, it is what it is, and we have to deal with it right now. So anyway, once he gets his exemption, they'll start resuming stuff back to the U.S. All right, well, that's it. Next week is going to be a clamshell box, a rather large one, and as it stands right now, but we'll see how that goes. If you've been around for a while, you know that things tend to change around here. So anyway, that will be next week. Thank you so much for watching the video. I will mention this, that I had last week's hollow form on the lathe, finishing the bottom, and something in the hollow form under vacuum let go. It come off of the vacuum chuck. It bounced against some metal over here and then spun back and hit my toolbox on the other side of the workshop. Unfortunately, it was not salvageable. There was a bunch of pieces that were taken out of it. I did think about basically cutting the top part of it off and then basically making a bowl out of the bottom part. But after doing some measurements, by the time I rejig it and get it back on the lathe, the bottom's going to be too thin. So it happens. You lose pieces. If you're going to do this as a living, you're going to lose pieces off the lathe. It's just it's just part of it. So, and there's really, you can take all the precautions you want, and sometimes it just doesn't seem to matter. And I'm a firm believer, over my years, I've encountered so many things like this that just don't seem to want to be made. There's just a lot of roadblocks trying to get to the end, and it just doesn't happen, and that's one of those pieces. So anyway, it wasn't salvageable. It's gone. It's in the trash. Oh well, moving forward. That's all we're doing here. All right, well, that's it. I'm out of here. Have yourselves a fantastic weekend. Thank you again so much for watching the video. And hey, if you can share this with your friends, I would greatly appreciate it. Now YouTube's got this hype button. So if you click that, apparently that'll help push my content to others as well. So hey, hit that hype button for me, and the like button. I kind of think they're the same, but maybe not. I don't know. It's a YouTube thing. All right. See you next week.